Hello, my name is Grace Carter, and I'm 34 years old. Life has been anything but simple for me, but I've always tried to make the best of what I have. For years, I thought I had the perfect life. I was married to a man I deeply loved, Michael, and I had a stepson, Jamie, who I cared for like my own. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Sometimes, the people you trust the most can hurt you the deepest. My story is about betrayal, heartbreak, and finding the strength to stand up for myself. It all started on what I thought was a regular Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished a long day at work, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. I had no idea that my life was about to take a sharp turn. As soon as I walked through the door, I noticed something was off. Michael was standing in the living room, his arms crossed, his face stormy. Jamie was sitting on the couch, looking at the floor, avoiding my gaze. "Grace," Michael said coldly, "we need to talk." His tone made my stomach drop. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Michael's jaw tightened. "Jamie told me what you've been doing behind my back." I blinked in confusion. What are you talking about?" Jamie finally looked up, tears in his eyes. "I saw you, Grace. You were on the phone with someone, laughing and smiling. I heard you say you couldn't wait to meet up with him." My heart sank. Jamie had misunderstood something, but I could see he was genuinely upset. "Jamie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was talking to Lydia, my best friend, about meeting up for coffee." Michael didn't budge. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Grace? Jamie wouldn't lie about something like this." No matter how much I tried to explain, Michael refused to believe me. He was convinced that I had been unfaithful, and nothing I said could change his mind. "I can't have someone like you in my house," he finally said, his voice cold and final. "Pack your things and leave." I looked at Jamie, hoping he would speak up, but he stayed silent. My heart broke as I realized that the little boy I loved like my own had turned against me. I packed my belongings that night, tears streaming down my face. The home I had worked so hard to make warm and loving felt like a stranger's house now. Michael didn't even look at me as I walked out the door. Jamie stood at the top of the stairs, watching, but he didn't say a word. I spent that night at Lydia's place. She listened as I poured out my heart, offering comfort and reassurance. "Grace," she said, "you don't deserve this. You've done so much for them, and this is how they repay you? You're better off without them." But I couldn't stop thinking about Jamie. He was just a kid, and I knew he must have been manipulated into believing something that wasn't true. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I had to find a new place to live, figure out how to move forward, and deal with the emotional pain of losing the family I thought I had. But I also realized something important. I wasn't powerless. I had the strength to start over, to rebuild my life on my own terms. The weeks after I left Michael's house were a whirlwind of emotions. I was hurt, angry, and confused. How could the man I had loved for years believe such a terrible lie? And why would Jamie, my sweet stepson, say something so damaging? I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I moved into a small apartment, just enough for me to feel safe and have a fresh start. But no matter how hard I tried to move on, the questions kept haunting me. I knew I needed answers. One day, while grocery shopping, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Linton. She was a kind, elderly woman who had always been friendly to me. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, but there was also a hint of concern. "Grace, dear," she said, "how are you doing?" I was so shocked to hear about what happened. Her words caught me off guard. "You know about it?" I asked cautiously. "Oh, yes," she said, leaning in closer. "Jamie was telling my grandson about how he had to tell his father the truth. He said you were planning to leave them for someone else." My heart sank. Jamie was spreading the lie? But why? "Mrs. Linton," I said, my voice trembling, "did he say anything else?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "He mentioned how much he hated that you were always trying to discipline him. Said he wanted things to go back to how they were before you came into their lives." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Jamie wasn't just misled, he had a motive. I went home and thought about what Mrs. Linton had said. Memories started to flood back. Jamie's reluctance to listen to me, his occasional outbursts about wanting his dad to himself, and the way he always seemed to cling to Michael whenever I tried to enforce rules. It all made sense now. Jamie had been struggling to accept me as a parental figure, and this lie was his way of trying to push me out of their lives. But why would Michael believe him so easily? That question still gnawed at me. I decided to confide in Lydia, my best friend. Over coffee, I told her everything Mrs. Linton had said. Lydia listened intently, her brow furrowed. "Grace, This isn't just about Jamie. Michael should have trusted you enough to hear your side of the story. I know, I said, sighing, but he didn't even give me a chance. He just threw me out like I was nothing. Lydia's eyes narrowed. Then it's time to find out why. If Michael was so quick to believe Jamie, there might be more to this story. With Lydia's encouragement, I started digging deeper. I reached out to mutual friends, neighbors, and even one of Michael's coworkers. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. Apparently, Michael had been feeling pressured at work, and his relationship with Jamie had become strained because of my efforts to establish boundaries. Jamie had seen this tension and used it to his advantage, telling Michael exactly what he wanted to hear, that I was the problem. But there was something else, something I hadn't expected. One of Michael's coworkers mentioned that he had overheard Michael talking about regretting certain decisions. What kind of decisions? I asked, my heart pounding. The coworker shrugged. He didn't say much, but he seemed conflicted, like he knew he'd made a mistake. Just when I thought I was starting to understand the situation, I received a text message from Michael. It was short but surprising. Grace, I need to talk to you. Please meet me at the cafe near your old office. I stared at the message, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, an angry, determined part, wanted answers. I texted back, agreeing to meet him the next day. When I arrived at the cafe, Michael was already there, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. He stood up when he saw me, but I stayed where I was, crossing my arms. What do you want, Michael? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He looked down at the table, then back up at me. Grace, I think I made a mistake. Oh, you think? I said, unable to hide the bitterness in my tone. You kicked me out without even listening to my side of the story. What do you expect me to say? Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. I was under a lot of pressure. And Jamie, he seemed so convincing. But now, I'm starting to realize that maybe I was wrong. Hearing his words gave me a small sense of satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. You didn't just make a mistake, Michael, I said firmly. You betrayed me. You chose to believe a child's lie over your wife's honesty. Michael looked genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. I need time to think about this, I said, standing up. But don't think for a second that you can just apologize and make everything okay. You need to prove to me that you're willing to change. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a surge of strength. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of my life. The meeting with Michael lingered in my mind, but I refused to let it control my emotions. I had given him a chance to speak, but his words were far from enough to erase the damage he'd done. If he wanted me to consider his apology, he'd have to earn it, and I wasn't about to make it easy. A week after the cafe meeting, I was surprised to find Jamie standing outside my apartment door. He looked nervous, clutching his backpack and shifting from foot to foot. Jamie? I asked, confused. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, he said, his voice trembling. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to face him, but something about the way he looked, guilty, vulnerable, made me step aside and let him in. As soon as the door closed, Jamie burst into tears. I'm sorry, Grace, he sobbed. I didn't mean for everything to get so bad. I just wanted Dad to spend more time with me. I led Jamie to the couch and sat down beside him, trying to process his words. Jamie, you need to explain. Why did you lie about me? Through his tears, Jamie confessed everything. He admitted that he had felt jealous of the time Michael and I spent together and resented the rules I had set for him. When he realized how much Michael trusted him, he saw an opportunity to get me out of the house. I thought if you were gone, things would go back to the way they were, he said, his voice cracking, but it didn't. Dad's been so angry and sad, and I feel awful. I didn't think it would turn out like this. Hearing Jamie's confession was heartbreaking. I wanted to be angry, but looking at him, all I saw was a child who had made a terrible mistake out of fear and insecurity. Jamie, I said gently, do you understand how much pain you caused? You didn't just hurt me, you hurt your dad, too. Families are supposed to support each other, not tear each other apart. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. I'm so sorry, Grace. I'll do anything to fix it. Please don't hate me. I sighed, my heart heavy. I don't hate you, Jamie, but fixing this won't be easy. You need to tell your dad the truth. The next evening, Jamie asked me to come with him to Michael's house so he could confess. I agreed, though the thought of stepping back into that house made my stomach churn. When we arrived, Michael looked surprised and wary to see me. Before he could say anything, Jamie stepped forward. Dad, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice trembling. I lied about Grace. She didn't do any of the things I said she did. I made it all up because I wanted her to leave. Michael's face went pale. Jamie, what are you talking about? I was jealous, Jamie admitted, tears welling up in his eyes again. I thought if Grace was gone, things would be better, but I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Dad. Michael turned to me, his eyes filled with guilt and shame. Grace, I don't know what to say. I can't believe I let this happen. I'm so sorry for everything. I crossed my arms, keeping my expression neutral. Michael, Jamie's owning up to his mistake, but what about you? You didn't just believe his lie, you acted on it without giving me a chance to explain. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? Michael nodded, his voice breaking. I do, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I was so caught up in everything else that I didn't stop to think. I let you down, and I let Jamie down, too. While their apologies were a step in the right direction, I wasn't ready to let go of all the pain just yet. This isn't something we can fix overnight, I said firmly. It's going to take time and effort from both of you to rebuild the trust that was broken. Michael nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever it takes. Grace, I mean it. I just want a chance to make things right. Jamie looked at me, his eyes filled with hope. Me too, Grace. I promise I'll do better. I laid out my conditions clearly. If Michael and Jamie wanted to repair our relationship, they needed to commit to open communication and mutual respect. For Jamie, that meant accepting me as part of the family and following the rules we set together. For Michael, it meant proving that he valued our marriage enough to stand by me, even when things got tough. They both agreed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, but I knew this was just the beginning. As I left Michael's house that night, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, cautious optimism, and a lingering sadness for what had been lost. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to walk it on my own terms. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and tentative steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. I wasn't ready to jump back into my marriage, but I also didn't want to shut the door on it completely. The key to moving forward was making sure that both Michael and Jamie understood the depth of the hurt they had caused and the work needed to mend it. Michael called me every evening, updating me on his efforts to create a better environment at home. He'd started attending a parenting workshop to learn how to communicate more effectively with Jamie, and he'd also begun therapy to address his own impulsiveness and inability to listen. Grace, I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said during one of our calls. I know I failed you, and I can't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I promise, I'm committed to doing better, for you and for Jamie. It was clear that Michael was taking my words seriously, but I needed more than promises. Actions speak louder than words, and I was determined to see real, lasting changes before I considered taking him back. Jamie's transformation was equally important. He began attending counseling sessions with a child therapist, who helped him work through his feelings of jealousy and insecurity. He also wrote me a heartfelt letter, apologizing again for his behavior and promising to make amends. In one particularly touching moment, Jamie asked if we could start over. I want to be a better stepson, Grace, he said, his voice earnest. I know I messed up, but I want us to be a family again. I smiled, touched by his sincerity. We'll get there, Jamie, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us. While Michael and Jamie worked on themselves, I focused on my own healing. I threw myself into my work, taking on new projects and even starting a side business that I'd always dreamed of pursuing. The independence I gained during those weeks was empowering, and it reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else's opinion or actions. I also reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. They reminded me of who I was before the chaos, and their support was invaluable as I navigated this difficult chapter of my life. After about 2 months, Michael asked if we could meet again, this time as a family. He wanted Jamie to be part of the conversation, so we could all discuss how to move forward together. I agreed, though I made it clear that this wasn't an invitation to pick up where we left off. This is about setting expectations and boundaries, I told him. If we're going to make this work, it has to be on solid ground. We met at a neutral location, a cozy park with a small cafe nearby. Michael had brought a notebook filled with ideas for improving our family dynamics, and Jamie had written down some goals for himself as well. Grace, Michael began, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for everything. I've been working hard to become a better husband and father, and I hope you can see that. Jamie chimed in, his voice steady. I've been working on myself too, Grace. I know I have a lot to prove, but I want you to know that I'm serious about being better. I listened carefully, taking in their words and the sincerity behind them. Then I shared my own perspective, emphasizing the importance of respect, trust, and open communication moving forward. By the end of the meeting, we had come to an agreement. We would take things one step at a time, focusing on rebuilding trust and strengthening our relationships. Michael and Jamie would continue their therapy sessions, and I would maintain my independence while giving our family dynamic a chance to heal. We hugged at the end of the conversation, a tentative but hopeful sign of the progress we'd made. The journey had been anything but easy, but it taught me valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of forgiveness. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, I chose to focus on the growth that had come from it. In the weeks that followed, I noticed real changes in both Michael and Jamie. They were more communicative, more respectful, and more committed to making our family work. Though the road ahead was still uncertain, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Whether or not our family fully healed, I knew I had done everything in my power to create a better future, for myself and for those around me. Because in the end, healing isn't just about mending relationships, it's about finding strength within yourself to move forward, no matter what lies ahead.